Thank you. All right. Boom, boom. Thank you so much for tuning in. Timothy Wenger here from The Man Effect. Today, this hour, whatever it is, I got Rollo Tomassi here with me from The Rational Male. And also, would you consider yourself, I guess, one of the godfathers of the red pill as well? Is that kind of
what I consider myself? A lot of people consider me one of the godfathers.
I know, but do you?
I'm one of the three. Do I consider myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess in a way. I mean, it's maybe Godfather's a little strong, but I'm one of the three R's in the manosphere: Rollo, Roosh, and Royce. Although Royce has changed his name to Heartiste, but been around for a very, very long time. And as far as the manosphere, I've been part of the manosphere since before it was even called the manosphere.
There you go.
I was red pill before anybody knew what the fuck red pill
was. Before people even used that term.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you for taking time and letting me ask you questions and entertaining my randomness. So just for a lot of my followers, or just for people who haven't heard of the red pill and the rational male, can you give them just kind of a short synopsis? I know it's a huge in-depth thing and we'll continue to talk about it. Yeah. But maybe just kind of an introduction statement for them.
Let's see. It's funny because people always ask me for the elevator speech for the rational male or what is red pill. I think red pill has kind of been bastardized a lot in the last probably like 6 or 7 years. I am definitely a red pill writer. I'm a red pill from the perspective of intersexual dynamics, because red pill means different things to different factions in the manosphere today, which is sort of this consortium and this collection of bloggers and writers, videographer, video guys, podcast guys, stuff like that deal with men's issues, and that is very broad. So you've got MRAs, you've got MGTOWs, you've got TRP, which is the red pill, pickup artistry, focus mostly on game and solving guys-girl problems, I guess. Yeah. There's a lot of other ones too, but I mean, those are probably the most notable. There's a few other random, but that manosphere also includes a lot of guys who do politics and things like that as well, and social issues and MRAs, of course, men's rights movement, what I would consider part of the manosphere. I would not necessarily consider all those guys red pill from my perspective, but they are happy to call themselves red pill right now because it's currently become kind of a brand, and it's a brand everybody wants a piece of right now because nobody's really laid ownership to it. But when I say red pill, I mean it from the way that we have been talking about it since 2001 or 2002. And I came up from a forum called SoSuave. And SoSuave was a pickup artist forum for a while until it got a little bit deeper. It wasn't just about seduction. It was about guys. And then it was about the psychology more. And that's what I was always interested in. I was kind of a player in my youth. But from the ages of probably about 18 until I was about 24, I played in a lot of heavy metal, glam rock, and some other hard rock back in the day, back in 88 through 93. Those were my years. Okay. I know, it's hard to people, and when I show people pictures like those days, that's not you. I got it. And so that was my game. And so all my, my notch count and my pickup artist days, it wasn't even called pickup artistry back then. It was just, you had game, or you figured something out for yourself and how to get laid and how to, sort of scratch that itch. And I had a lot of social proof then. I had a lot of pre-selection back then. That was really my game days. And I was really kind of learned a lot from those days. And then later on, I got involved with a woman who was borderline personality disorder. And so I can speak to stuff like that. I've been married coming up on 22 years, 22 years this month. I married a gorgeous girl that I met in a club, like all those places that you're not supposed to meet, you want to find a wife, you've got to go to church, you've got to go to school, or you got to go to a bookstore and look for the girls.
Nonprofit organization.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, I met my wife in a club and we hooked up in the normal way, and it turned out to be a good fit. good match. So I can
I
talk to
love
you
that.
about marriage. I can talk to you
Yeah.
about raising a child. I have a daughter who is 20 years old, and I raised a girl from, infancy all the way up to 20 years so far. So I can speak to that. I have a
Yeah.
really broad depth of knowledge. My career, I've been everything from a graphic designer to a art director to a brand manager.
Yeah.
My claims to fame are I was the art director for a couple of very if I mentioned, I'm not going to mention the names, but if I were to mention the names to you, these casinos, you would know the casinos that I'm talking
Uh-huh.
about. And I did a lot of that. I also later on, I got into working in the alcohol industry through the casino industry. I got involved in that and doing branding, and
Makes sense.
finally got picked up and hired as an art director / brand manager for a import export company that had dozens of brands that I put my mark on as an artist and as a brand manager and as a marketer.
Very
Two
cool.
of which that company is no longer around. It's been divested, and that I made a good chunk of change off of that divestiture, and I'm still getting money from ownership stakes, small ownership stakes
Mhm.
in a couple of brands. So that kind of helped. And then really most of my career has been doing promotional stuff and working in the liquor industry, which I still do now. That's my main source of income, is doing promotional stuff and doing art direction for many different brands now, not just the ones that I used to have. And so as a result of that, that put me in the field a lot.
Yeah.
I had to pick up, I had to I have to choose and select beautiful women to be at my booths and to do my promotional stuff for
Uh-huh.
doing, like, we're doing on premise, even off premise, really. Um, we're doing stuff like that. I'm always around that and organizing that. I've organized everything from like martini fests and stuff like that to all the way through, what is it? Thunder from Down Under, the all male review, where these guys, these male strippers are out there taking off their clothes for 40-year-old spinsters or divorcees. So, and I have this kind of odd, unique set of experiences that
Hmm.
it still puts me in places so that I can observe. I'm kind of like Diane Fossey or Jane Goodall, like
Mhm.
Gorillas in the
Mhm.
Mist. I observe them and I write, find them, what are they doing today? And, the alpha goes to the female, and that kind of shit. So I have a
Yeah.
lot of
Totally.
infield experience with that. I have a lot of experience with pickup artists and pickup artistry. And the main thing that I'm known for is really connecting the dots and aggregating all of these experiences and all
Mhm.
these experiences of guys. When I was part of So Suave, one of the reasons So Suave was so instrumental in my coming up as Rollo Tomassi was I had access to all these guys from all over the world telling me what
Mhm.
worked for them and what didn't. And at the time when I started, um, kind of being a
Mhm.
moderator for So Suave, the So Suave forums, I was in school and I was working on my BFA, my Bachelor of Fine Arts, and
Mm.
I was
Mhm.
minoring in psychology. And as part of my minor, I had to do a lot of peer counseling, and I tended to opt for guys
Mm.
because
Mhm.
it was what I was experiencing on So Suave.
Yeah.
And so
It's like
I
very
started I
complimentary.
started being like yeah, as part of the peer counseling. It's basically you
Yeah.
just sit and you talk and you apply your own principle. They just want you to do, what an actual psychologist would do.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so I ended up being very popular with guys, and particularly older dudes um, who were in marriages, and they were trying to
Uh-huh.
ask me, like, how can I get my wife to have sex with me, and how can I, just all
Mhm.
the most typical things you hear from like the guys in the Dead Bedrooms subreddit on Reddit, or anyways, like, just giving these guys advice.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what, this might be something that I really want to do. So I decided to double major. So I double majored in, I got a BFA and a BS in behavioral psychology. And I
Interesting.
probably would have majored in evolutionary psychology, but the school as that did not offer it then, because that's
Mm.
how new the
Mhm.
the school of that particular psychology was back then. And so
Mm.
but as a result of that, I started reading a lot of Marty Hasselton, Gangstad,
Yeah,
David
yeah.
Buss, all these guys um, who were I don't know, the vanguard, I guess, of evolutionary psychology, but from the perspective of intersexual dynamics. And that's what I was really focused on, because I think a lot of people think that evolutionary psychology is just these guys, people coming up with reasoning why women are the way they are. And, it's just
Hmm.
speculation. No, 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 no. Evolutionary psychology is a very, very accurate, very tough science. And it's tough because of people saying exactly that. They say, oh,
Hmm.
this is just conjecture and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, but because it is, that ups the requirement for proof and for experimentation and for being able to repeat those things. And so,
Hmm.
and then so I started learning about ovulatory shift. I started learning about that, and then I was learning also about behavioral psychology at the same time. So I understand about conditioning,
Yeah.
positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Extinction bursts, all this stuff that comes from behavioral, because behavioral appealed to me, I think, as a guy, because it was more nuts and bolts.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
like learning how the car worked, instead of like, oh, sit on the
Hmm.
couch and talk about your feelings kind of shit.
Hmm.
I think that's probably most people's impression of psychologists. But I'm not a psychologist per se. I don't have a doctorate in psychology. I just know what I know from having majored in it. Um, so it put me in with evolutionary psychology. And so talking to these guys online, doing what I've
Yeah.
done, it just kind of all coalesced into me starting the blog, The Rational Male, in 2011. And then writing the first book, which
Yeah.
was inspired from those blog posts, in 2013. And then I thought, like I said, I thought that was going to be my only book that I would ever write. Just want to get this
Hmm.
out there. I want guys to have this so that they, so they can function, and that maybe save some people's lives, because I've had to deal with 2 suicides in my past,
Yeah.
for exactly those reasons. And then everybody loved it, and it's become sort of the Bible of the red pill community right now. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
living text. It's not something that you just go, I'm going to read this and put on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
It's something that, like, when I go and I do speaking, they'll come to me with this book, my book, and they'll want me to sign it. And they will show me all these little tags and all these little Post-it
Mm.
notes, and highlighting it in multiple colors and writing things in the sidelines and stuff like that. And that when I saw that, I go, okay, this is a lot more than just a write it and forget it book. It's guys are, changing their lives because of this. And I'm
Yeah.
glad, because that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
It's exceeded every expectation I ever had of it. And I didn't have very high expectations of it. But, well, I mean, people, and I should also say, and maybe the people listening to this are already readers, but I'm working on a second edition of that first book, because
Mm.
when I put it out there, I just wanted to get it out there. And so
Hmm. Yep.
consequently and I had an editor too, but even with an editor, I'm missing all this shit, and I'm missing, they're written like blog posts and not really
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like for reading. So I mean, I guess you read, but I mean, for a book. Um, and so I put that book out, and then consequently after that, people started asking me more specific questions about things that were in the book. And so
Uh-huh.
I had guys saying, "Hey, I want my son to know this stuff, so he doesn't make repeat the mistakes that I made."
Mm.
And so I wrote the second book, which is Preventive Medicine, because guys kept telling me, I really needed this before I got married. I wish I would have known this shit when I was 18. I wish I would have
Mm.
seen the signs of this really horrible woman that I was with. And
Yeah.
if I'd have known this, I never would have made those decisions. And so it was, where were you when I needed this stuff? So that was, the second book was an answer to that. And then the third book, which came out almost a year ago now, which is weird to say, because it came out in July of last year,
Mm.
called Positive Masculinity. And that was also a response, at least about a quarter, maybe a third of that book is dedicated to red pill parenting and
Mm.
using red pill awareness in this, and what I talk about in the first book as a parent, as a more mature guy, to use, because they want to raise their kids. They want to know what to watch out for.
Yeah.
They want to know, and even if they don't have kids, they want to know in the future. And then the guys
Yeah.
who do have kids, they want to know how they can change their selves to be more red pill, and then carry that over into their parenting and
Yeah.
their marriages too. So the positive masculinity was really partially about that, but it was also about how masculinity has been debased really in society, and how, what we would call what I call conventional masculinity, which is a masculinity aspects and traits that are sort of universal to men, that are specific and unique to men. That side of masculinity is just completely destroyed now. And so I wanted to write a book about that, and I wanted to raise awareness to that, and I wanted to give people an idea that, hey, masculinity is not always ridiculous, and it's not always toxic, or it's not always a bad thing, because that's what we say. We say masculinity, like today, it has a connotation of being negative, just saying that. So well, that's my story, my brief story.
No, that was great. It's a pretty good chronological timeline. But what I'm curious about is, if you have this whole other life, you have a wife, you have a kid, you have a full-time job, why spend so much energy and time devoted to other men? And you have a great article on your website about your why, but for people just tuning in, like, why do this? Why spend so much of your time and invest so much into this community?
Well, I got asked that a long time before you are asking that. If you look at the introduction to the third book, I kind of go into that, and I have a post called "What's your problem?" And it's really just sort of an essay on why bother and why do you do what you do. And I give a bunch of answers in that about what led me to writing what I write about. And for the most part, I want to help guys. I'm not a guy that gives 5-step, 12-step advice on how to live a better life, or this power positive thinking kind of stuff. I'm not that dude. I'm not a mindset guy so much. I mean, I guess I am in a way, but and I'm not a motivational speaker or anything like that. But I wanted to help guys because I had I'll just try to give you the brief rundown. I told you I had experience with suicide. And I have had friends who have lived just such shitty lives and have made really bad decisions in their lives. And the guys who would come up to me and say, "Where was this when I needed this?" I wish I would have had this. I wish I would have done things differently if I'd have known what you're telling me right now. And as for some guys, that's suicide. And I have had a brother-in-law who hung himself because he did everything right. He did everything by the book. He got my sister-in-law, my wife's sister. He got her pregnant when she was like 19 years old, 18 or 19 years old. And everybody thought he was going to run, and they thought he was just going to bug out and not do the right thing. But he did, and he didn't run, and he married her, and they had a second child after that. And he completely changed his life to accommodate being a father at a very early age, like 19 years old. And so he built this life for himself, and he built a business, and he saved his pennies in spite of the fact that he didn't have a college education. And he worked his ass off, basically. I won't tell you what he did, but he worked his ass off, bought some land, started building his own house, because that's the kind of dude he is. He could do all this stuff, and he wasn't book smart, but he was like life smart. And I'm not saying he was this perfect dude. He had his flaws. The guy was very, very beta, and that was his biggest flaw. And he loved his wife to an extent that was what, in my book, he had one-itis for her, and he thought she was his soulmate, and he literally could not live without her. So when she got to be about 40 years old, and again, she is very, very, even to this day, she's in her late 50s, she is still very good looking. And, had a boob job now and all this other stuff going on. And she decided that she wanted a divorce because she got a better offer. So hypergamy sort of came in, and my brother-in-law's, his outlook was that he was doing everything by the book. He was doing everything by the old social contract. And he had, like I said, he had done everything right. Okay. But still his wife had met a much richer guy, like a guy who's a multimillionaire. And I'm not exaggerating. The guy has a multi-million-dollar company. And he was just divorcing his wife, and through some really kind of twisted religious, affiliate or, connection or association with the two of them, she just decided that she had had enough because my brother-in-law was a very, very possessive guy, which was also another aspect of his beta-ness, because he knew that she was above him in sexual market value.
Insecure.
By at least 2 points. So very insecure about that. And so it was very, as a result, very mate guarding, very possessive. And so all of this religiosity and everything else that's, supposed to keep them together was just thrown out the window. And I tell guys this all the time. Hypergamy doesn't care. Doesn't care that you are a perfect father, or that you play by the books. It just wants what it wants. Hypergamy is hypergamy. It is hypergamy. And all the rest of the things we pile on top of it to limit it, to buffer it, sometimes in the right situations, it's going to express itself no matter what. So I saw this, and so as a consequence, my brother-in-law hung himself, not unlike Anthony Bourdain did. I had another friend who put a gun in his mouth and shot himself. He was a very well-known DJ in these parts out here, and I mean DJs in he was like a on radio talk show guy. And he literally could not live without his girlfriend, who ended up breaking up with him, and so he just didn't want to go on, and he shot himself because he didn't have any information. He didn't understand about the soulmate myth. There's a reason that the soulmate myth is the first thing, or I think the title is "There Is No One," and that is the first chapter in the first book. And I did that on purpose because if you take nothing away from that book, and you'll take a lot away, but if you take nothing away from that book, I want guys to know that the soulmate myth and just disabusing yourself of the soulmate myth will save your life. And had he known that, and had he had some kind of foreknowledge, I guess, of all that, then perhaps he'd still be with us. And perhaps Anthony Bourdain would be. And so that led to more of me understanding like the alpha and the beta mindsets. And I don't use alpha and beta in the respect that I think that, men are silverback gorillas, or they're, wolves in the, tundra or some shit like that. That's not people want to make those, I guess they're called etymological associations. No, I use alpha and beta as abstracts. I use those terms to describe certain characteristics, character sets. I don't think that, men are, analogous to gorillas. Although I do think we share a lot, but that's not what I'm talking about. But, and I think I got to clarify that, because a lot of people will go, "Oh man, he just used alpha and beta. I can't believe it. Fuck it. I'm turning it off," because they don't want to believe in that. Well, don't necessarily think that it's just the way that you think it is. So why do I do what I do? I apply myself because I want guys to have the tools to turn themselves into better men. I give content away probably better than anybody else, and I don't feel bad saying that, because I see a lot of guys who get into this pep rally mentality, and they go, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna conquer the world, and we're gonna go out there and are you gonna get the girls? Yeah, we're gonna get the girls. Are you gonna go out there and live a better life? Yeah, I'm gonna go out and live it. And it's this Tony Robbins build yourself up like crazy train, right? And when I see that, I go, the difference between me and Tony Robbins, or me and the guys, Owen Cook from RSD, or the difference between myself and these mindset gurus is I actually have some fucking content to give to guys so they can use this. It's not just feel better about yourself, guys. Go, go, go. Build up your confidence. And they go, how? I don't know. Just go, go, go. Well, I have stuff. I have real material that I think I've connected enough dots that I can give this to guys, and they can go, yeah, I can use this. I wish I would have known this. I had a guy at the last 21 convention telling me, you saved my life. And he went to the 21 convention, which was where I usually speak every year. And he flew in from, happened to be on the same plane I was in. He flew in just to talk to me and just to pull me aside and say, thank you for saving my life. Because he had
That's so crazy.
a date to kill himself. He hadn't written it down. Okay, this is the day I'm going to do it. I need to take care of my insurance. I need to make sure my kids are taken care of. I don't want my wife to be inconvenienced. Here's how I'm going to do it so it's not so bad. And, just basically going through all of this stuff to make the inconvenience of his suicide as, leastly impactful as he possibly could. And then he read my book, and he got into the manosphere a little bit, and then he read my book, and then he decided not to kill himself, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to play this game differently. I'm going to play this game better, because now I have the tools and the instruments. And so that's why I do this. I mean, if I had to worry, it's to help guys and to save guys' lives.
That's incredible.
But I'll tell you, the thing is I didn't really set out to do that in the beginning. I didn't go, oh man, I want to write something to save these dudes. I was genuinely interested in intersexual dynamics. I genuinely wanted it. I just, like I said, I happened to be in the right place at the right guy, right place, right time.
Yeah.
And I decided that I'm just going to write. And most of my posts were just responses and conversations that I had on SoSwap. It was just sort of an extension of what I was doing at school.
Yeah.
And I found all of this other stuff and and it wasn't just guys who wanted to kill themselves. It was guys who were just destitute because they couldn't get laid, or they're destitute because they couldn't get their wives to come back around, or like, oh, I lost frame, I lost all this stuff, and just kind of snowballed into being and doing what I would consider red pill. So I want to help people. I want to help people help them. I want to help people help themselves, pretty much. And I know probably everybody says shit like that, but I'm not in the business of making better guys. I'm in the business of handing guys the tools and the information they need so that they can become better guys. And I'm criticized for this, but I don't think it's odd or off base, but I think I just do descriptive stuff, and I don't do prescriptions. I don't say, here's the 12 rules for life. I don't do, follow these 10 steps and you'll be authentic masculinity is just 10 steps away. No, it's a progress, man. If you think it's 10 steps or 5 steps or whatever the fuck it is, you need to go back and say, what are these guys selling me? Because it's a progress. And maybe their steps are definitely accurate for them. Maybe there's something to those, but those, I would consider parts of those steps as part of the whole package. And this building your project. It's you yourself are a project. And I want to give guys a textbook to that project. I want to give guys the content and the information that they lack to help them complete their project. Yeah. And that project might always be in progress, but that's why I do it.
I think it's really important though that people know that, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there around your message. And so like when I was digging into your website, reading more about your why, it made me so much more happy about your content, because I was looking for myself of what your opinion was. I wasn't reading what other people are saying. And it made me really happy, because I have a very strong heart for men who are destitute as well. And it's like to see someone.
And the other thing, the other thing is pretty much everything that's in my books you can find for free on my website. So when I put the book together, like I said, I thought it was going to be the only book I would ever write. And so therefore I made it really teeny tiny font and try to cram as much shit into the book as I could, because I thought that was going to be it. Silly me. Now I'm an author. Okay. But what I was thinking in doing that was giving it away. I've been working, like I said, got a little bit of history on me. I've been making a good chunk of change for a while now. I mean, I'm not a millionaire, but I'm doing okay. And I didn't need to sell a book to make a living. Certainly not in the beginning, I'll tell you that. So I was giving it away for free. And then you can go, if you really want to, you can go dig them up off of the SoSwap archives too. And so I have guys who will give me grief, critics will give me grief, and they'll go, you're just trying to sell a book. You're just one of these red pill charlatans who, selling snake oil, and you're just, that's all. And, you're just telling them what they want to hear, and you're playing on their insecurities and all this other shit. And I'm like, I'm the worst marketer in the world if you think that, because I give away my shit. And my my
That's
book
funny.
on my book, I make the least amount of royalties on my book, and that is what I push the most because I want guys
Mm,
to have it in their hands. I want it to spark conversation, and I want them to talk
yeah.
about stuff because I'm a bottom up guy.
Yeah.
I want guys to talk at a base, grassroots level, and then from there
Yeah.
take it up. And I think that's one of the mistakes I think MRAs make is that they're top down. I'm bottom up,
Yeah.
and that I so it's like I'm giving this stuff away. You can buy the book, you can get the audio, which everybody loves the audio almost more than the book because it's easy. You just press
Yeah.
play and you're ready to go. Or the digital. The digital does very, very well, and for all three of them. But the main book that is the flagship is really The Rational Male, which is the book that costs the least. It's $9.99, and so these guys give me this grief about that, and I go, well, it's all free on the site if you want to go look at it. And then of course I come back and I go, well, if it's all free, why would I buy your book? Like,
Yeah.
I can't fucking win. I can't win. So I'm just like, screw it. You do with it whatever you want to do with it. But that's my intent. I'm glad people like
Yeah.
it.
That's really good. And for people who are watching, like seriously, go to his site. Like his articles are really in depth. They're really articulate. And like I've really
Too articulate sometimes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing is, it's like kind of like what you said. I feel like you're putting tools on the table and you're like, this is how you use it. And if you choose to use it, this is how it will help. And
Well, people say I don't give prescriptions. Well, I don't, but I don't. It's not like I don't give suggestions. So
yeah,
if I say something and you go, "Hey, man, I could use it like this," why don't you use it like that? I could go right ahead.
yeah. But I mean, even as an electrician in my past, I had tools for specific scenarios, but I learned how to use those tools in different scenarios too, that they weren't built for necessarily, but they helped me get the job done. And so it's like, I feel like in a lot of ways, if you're teaching men communication, it will apply to other areas that weren't initially like, I don't know, intended.
And then sometimes one tool has very, very many uses, particularly
Yeah.
because like I get criticized a lot for being very dependent or very heavily interested, I guess, in hypergamy. And the
Yeah.
reason I am is because it applies to so many different aspects of intersexual dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
social dynamics, political dynamics. I mean, you could just
Yeah.
go on and on and on when it comes to what is really a base idea of hypergamy, which is one of the things that was the title of the first talk that I gave last year was hypergamy micro to macro, and how it goes from being in ovulatory shift and being sort of a phenomenon that's rooted in women's sexual strategy, and which is really a part of their biology. Wanting the alpha fucks and then wanting the beta bucks guys later on, different parts of their cycle, and trying to find this lifelong way of optimizing hypergamy. Well, we blow that up into a personal scale. Now we blow it up into a social scale. And we see, I mean, really, why do we have male dominance hierarchies? Hypergamy. Why do we have, why do we want so desperately to have a female president right now? Hypergamy, benefiting women. And what's the most benefit you can do? Ensure that they have hypergamy with the broadest pool. And it basically what's the purpose of feminism? The purpose of feminism is to maximally restrict men's sexuality while maximally unrestricting women's. Well, how do we unrestrict women's? We ensure that hypergamy is what we focus on primarily. So people want to give me grief. They always want to say, "Oh yeah, hypergamy just means marrying up, or a tendency to marry up," and that's the sociological definition. But I think that hypergamy deserves a much broader definition, and so that's one of the things that I try to
do. And that's one of the tools that builds quite a foundation for a lot of your articles.
Understanding that is definitely a primary tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of one of my goals of this conversation is to help humanize you as well. In the sense of like people make a lot of assumptions or judgments about you without ever even seeing you or hearing you or reading your articles. And so like you're a married man for 22 years, you said?
Yeah, well, 22 in this month, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, I think a lot of people see the red pill as propagating men just to go out and get laid and never have commitment. And so for someone to be kind kind of the foundation of that movement, to be married for 22 years seems a little contradictory. So I was wondering if you could just touch base on that a little bit.
Well, that's one of the reasons I gave you that short introduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, yeah, I mean, I've been married. I've been married. I have been married for 22 years. Like I said, I have a daughter. I've raised a girl. Okay, in this society, I am around beautiful women all the time as part of my promotional work and part of my career, and I've been doing that for quite some time. I've been a very low-level beta when I was in high school, and just to I wouldn't. Well, I got laid when I was 17, so I guess you can't really call me an incel, but very much blue pill conditioned from a very early age by my father, my father was very much beta, but he was old school, old social contract beta, meaning like he still believed in the old social contract between men and women. Like you go out and you have a job and you put in your 8 hours a day and you get a pension and you work for the company and you do the right thing, then a good woman will come into your life because she'll see that and realize that, that kind of stuff. That maybe that worked in the 50s, maybe that worked in the 60s. I was born in 1968, so maybe it was working for him back then. My dad was married, but my dad never understood red pill awareness or red pill dynamics or anything like that. He was just brought up to believe, and that was, can't really blame him because that was his generation, his era. But got raked over the coals by, not by my mom so much, but certainly by my stepmother, his second wife. So he's married twice. And so as a result of all that was going on, my stepmother was very much a feminist, super feminist. And remember, we're talking like a 70s and 80s feminist. So they're like Gloria Steinem, years feminism. And oh God, I could tell you a really funny story about that. But so anyways, that sort of made, I guess by default, sort of made me a beta and more blue pill conditioned because I wasn't getting anything like that at home. My father certainly wasn't. My dad was masculine enough, but he was not in your face about it. He was not. He wasn't like, "Come on, go try out for football" or anything like that kind of shit. He wasn't like that. But my father was very confused. He was a very confused guy because when it came to women, everything else he had pretty much down. He was really good with, but. Very confused about women because everything he was doing wasn't working the way that the advertising promised him it would work. So he never really got it. I always, in one of my chapters, was like, just get it. My dad never really got it. And so he got Alzheimer's. Yeah, my dad died from Alzheimer's, and he still was trying to hook up with the women in his assisted living facility using the same shit that he had used from the time he was, I was a kid, like he was very much invested in the, what I call the savior schema. If you save the girl, she's going to reciprocate with love or sex or intimacy or some kind of appreciation. And I laugh now because when I see these guys who are these incels who think, their critics think that they believe that they are owed sex by being a nice guy. Like these nice guys think they're not really nice. They think that we owe them sex because they were nice to us. We don't owe you anything. Never believe. Like most guys don't. I mean, I would say the vast majority of guys don't. Well, there is an old social contract that says if you go and you date a woman long enough and you're nice enough to her and you do things for her and you press the right buttons and you take care of yourself and you get a good job and that is the old social contract. And so what's funny to me is like when I read these articles about what I call chore play, you'll get more sex if you do more chores around the house. Isn't that the same transactional shit you said that they are not owed? I mean, and so I've written quite a bit about that. But anyways, my dad was one of these guys who believed in that shit. He believed in if he did enough chores or if he did enough things for somebody that, Chris Rock is always saying, men are like, hey, can I get the groceries for you? How about some dick? Can I fix your flat tire? How about some dick? And that line, that his hit, that bit that he does. And that's what it's based on. It's that savior mentality. And that's part of the old social contract. But my dad was very much invested in that. And so as a consequence, I kind of picked up a little bit of that myself. I did not, I was very much overly invested in women when I was younger, when I was certainly in my teenage years. I would have been a great white knight today if I was.
Yeah.
And so I used to be like that. I used to keep thinking that the more I did, the better women would like me, or the more I identified with the feminine. Like I have another post called Identity Crisis, and most guys still do this today. Is they feel that if they get in touch with their emotions, if they do what they're told by, the gynocentric society, that if they get in touch with their female side, or they do all of this, Jungian psychology the right way, then women will like them because they'll be not like other guys. They'll be unique because so many other guys, they only give a shit about themselves and they're chauvinists and they're these caveman assholes. No, that hasn't been the majority of guys for a very, very long time. But you know what is a majority of guys? Guys who identify with women, or think that they do, because they think that that is the way that they're going to get in a woman's pants. They think that if they identify, and the more alike that they become with a woman, the better their odds are. And it took me a long time to understand that that's not the case. It's not the case at all. It's like the more different you are, the more masculine you are to that feminine, the more attractive you are. It's not, most women who aren't lesbians want to have sex and want to marry men who are men. They don't want to marry men who think that they are women. Okay, because there is that balance, and there's that hindbrain, evolved firmware that we're not attracted to legs. So it took me a long time to figure that out, because I used to think that the better I was as thinking like a woman, I was never going to go put on, I was never going to be transgender or any shit like that. There was nothing like that when I was growing up, but I could understand that there was, particularly during like the 80s and the glam rock phase, Poison was like women, and I never understood why. This is fun. I never understood why guys hated those guys so much, because I had really long hair. I had really long blonde hair, and I never put on makeup, but I was in that rock and roll set.
Wait, hold on. Like to your ass, or like?
Just about to my ass. If you're I know if you're familiar with a band called Skid Row and Sebastian Bach.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Look up Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. That was my look. I was about as rail thin. I was heroin thin, and I didn't do heroin, but I was very. Growing up, I wasn't lifting weights like I did when I didn't start lifting weights. So I was probably about 19 or 20. Seriously started lifting weights. So as a consequence, I was very, very skinny. And so, go ahead and look it up. That's funny. That was
I'm looking at it right now.
I can show you pictures that you'll go, oh yeah. And so God. I never understood why other guys, like more masculine dudes, hated on those guys so much back then. And it's because they probably saw something that I didn't see at the time. They saw, women still, I think to this day, really like long hair on a guy, if it's on the right looking guy, if it's on the right guy. But back then, certainly everybody when Hollywood, when I was living down there, certainly had long hair. I was just a face in the crowd for a while. I mean, that was my game back then. And just to catch you up though. So during my high school years, I was very much a beta, and then I found my one-itis girl. I overinvested. She was the first girl I ever had sex with. I overinvested in her, and I became really codependent because I was of the upbringing and the idea that you meet a girl, and if she has sex with you, that means she's really into you, and that you plan a life together after that, because because I was never brought up to make myself my own mental point of origin. I was always brought up to think of the ladies, think of other people first. And maybe that's a religious thing too, but like think of other people before you think of yourself. I have since changed my mind about that. I believe in enlightened self-interest. I believe that I cannot help anyone, or I cannot help anyone as effectively as I can if I help myself. So it's like myself comes first, and then I decide who I'm going to help and who I'm going to do. So it's not like I'm saying, and I don't I don't advocate for narcissism. There's a big difference. I don't advocate for being selfish, but I do advocate for thinking of yourself as your very first thought when it comes to decision making, when it comes to very important decisions. And so up to that point, I was making decisions based on how can I be a supportive guy for this? So I'm the right husband in the future. How can I be that? And I seriously, man, if she had been of the same mind, I probably would have asked this girl to marry me. But as it turned out, I moved away to a college town. I wasn't going to the college. I had like zero ambition beyond being a good boyfriend and potentially a husband for this girlfriend. And as a consequence, I had one-itis. I thought in the soulmate shit. And I moved to a different place. She broke up with me by cheating on me while I was there and she was back where she was. And so I tried this long distance relationship. I've got that experience that I can talk about. I can talk about being, having the soulmate, delusions. So I got a lot of experience about a lot of things. So I was very much beta back then. And then as a result of that, I kind of did a 180. I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm just going to move back to LA. I already play music. I'm already a halfway decent bass player. And I didn't care about, I was a guitar player and a bass player. And everybody wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. They all wanted to be like the guitar hero. And so I'm like, I don't care. I just wanted to get in a band and make music. Because I really love playing. Don't get me wrong. I like playing music. I'm definitely an artist and musician by nature. But I ain't gonna lie, I wanted to get in a band so I could get laid. And that's what I did, because sure shit wasn't for the money back then. There was no money to be had. But so I got into playing in the LA club scene for almost 6 years. And when I talk about my notch count is public knowledge, I'm right about 43. I think I've had sex about 43. And most of those were in that time stretch of when I was playing in a band. And so I went from God. I went from a long blonde hair. I went from being a very kind of sad beta, not quite gamma, but to a beta, to being really an alpha who by default, because I played a character that these girls wanted. I played the character of being the long-haired rocker dude that they all had fantasies about because they've been watching MTV for the last 8 years, 10 years. And it was big. It was huge back then. And if you could pull off the look and if you could play 4 notes on a guitar, you were, I mean, that's not to say that there aren't some good bands. There are still several bands that I really like from that era. But back then, you have to understand what that scene was about. That scene was, I mean, I could probably do a whole show on the old LA rock scene. But yeah, I know. And so that was my game.
So
it was like I went from being a beta to being an alpha, and I couldn't keep women off of me. I had women who I had one girlfriend, and I was going to a community college at the time that I was also playing in bands. I had this one girlfriend who would knock on my window, like on the window of my room, my house, because she didn't want other girls to see her coming into my apartment, right? She would knock on my window at about 6:30 in the morning because she knew I had to be at like the college by like 8 or something, and she knew I'd be getting up, want to have sex with me before I started my day. And so she would crawl into the window. We'd have sex.
What the fuck?
And then she'd go back out, and I would go shower up, and it was crazy. It was so fucking easy to get laid. It was the easiest time I ever had getting laid. And why? Because I had pre-selection. I had social proof because I played in a fairly popular band at the time. And and this is not just being in the clubs. I wasn't necessarily domain dependent. I took what I learned in the clubs and applied it to other women in other situations. So I could pick up girls at college. I could pick up girls at a fast food place. My mother and my brother lived in Lake Tahoe at the time, and I would fly up there for vacations, and I would be the only dude there with really long blonde hair and had this rocker look, and this whole. I played the character so fucking perfectly that, and I'll go ahead and say this: I ended up. There used to be this show in Lake Tahoe, and it was called Playboy's Girls of Rock and Roll. It was a cabaret show at one of the clubs up there.
Mm-hmm.
And got to the point where I was up there and I went to see the show. My brother knew a few people who were like stage hands in the show. I didn't know anybody,
Mm-hmm.
any of the girls or anything.
Mm-hmm.
They were either former playmates or they were like runner-up playmates for like the college girls issues or some shit like that, right? So they were dancers, striptease kind of thing. It was a cabaret show. It was a standard cabaret show. I remember this is like 1988, 89.
Mm-hmm.
And first time I ever had sex with a Playboy model was in Tahoe because I had the look and I was playing that character and I knew what was expected of me as that look and as that character. And so I had sex with Playboy centerfold. That was great. You know, at that point I thought, man, I've made it. It's like I graduated or something. I was like, man, I've actually come of age, I guess. And here I am. I was
You're Playboy.
21, 22 years old back then. And I'm not going to tell you who it was, but it was a Playboy centerfold of, let's see, that narrows it down to 12. So let's say it was 1989 or 88, one of those. So you can go and look up those years and you can wonder which one that Rollo Tomassi got. She doesn't look like that anymore, though. I've looked at pictures of her, and she, you know, because now she's in her 40s or late 40s or early 50s, I think. Doesn't look like that anymore. You think that the centerfold look stays forever? It does not.
No.
In fact, you probably don't want to look up what she looks like now. Anyway, so I at that point I got into a relationship as a result of that because I got cocky and because I was playing that and I was so successful doing that. I was overconfident, I think, because I ended up getting together with a woman who was borderline personality disorder. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I just knew that she was a crazy bitch. And she was crazy in bed and she was crazy out of bed. And I gave up pretty much everything that made me an alpha dude because of this, because I still had not killed that beta blue pill aspect of myself. I was playing I was alpha with other girls in the clubs and I was able to turn it into, you know, some top shelf ass for a long time. But I didn't understand women. I didn't understand hypergamy. I didn't understand, certainly didn't understand the psychosis that this girl had. I just knew she was hot and she was just giving me porn star sex like I'd never had in my life. And I had some good sex with some other girl. But she was absolutely out of this world in bed and out of this world in everything else. She was insanely jealous. And insanely psychotic, and to the point where she drew me in to her psychosis. And I began to believe that I was the problem for her. Like, she loved me, she wanted to have sex, and she was really into me, but she was jealous of other girls because other girls liked me. And so I had to give that up. And I had to give up everything that made me attractive, really. I stopped playing in bands. I didn't cut my hair, but I stopped playing in bands. I gave up a lifestyle that I'd really grown accustomed to and I really enjoyed. But I thought I was doing the wrong thing because it was making her unhappy and it was making her, you know, illness. And we didn't even call it an illness because I didn't even know that it was a psychological condition until later. When I started, I didn't understand what borderline personality disorder was until I was minoring in psychology, and I got the DSM, Diagnostic Statistic Manual, for that time, and I looked it up, and I'm like, holy shit, this is exactly who she was. And I was like, and I didn't realize just how big of a bullet that I dodged by getting out of that relationship. And that relationship lasted almost 4 years, and I was crushed as a guy. I was just this side of being, I was certainly gamma by then, but I was just this low. I mean, she was abusive in so many ways and had me thinking, like, I mean, it was like when I finally got done with it, I finally started dating. I was walking on eggshells with every other girl that I had ever met after that, because I felt like if I like she was insanely jealous, right? So if we walk in a club, or we couldn't even go see a fucking movie without, or a restaurant without seeing a girl in a bikini on a picture somewhere. It could be just a beer commercial or a beer, ad or something. And if I did like this, I go, look, I just looked one way, she's like, you want to fuck her, don't you? And it was just like this crazy, manic jealousy and like hostility. And then it was like, oh, I'm sorry, I love you. Oh, let's go fuck, And then, so it was going from this really high to really low to really high to really low. And it gave me PTSD, really. Not in a sense that, not like the guys get when they're in combat, but it was traumatic. And then after I got out of that, I was still kind of traumatized by that. And I talk to guys today who still tell me about their borderline personality disorder girls. And I've written a post about that. And this Saturday, myself and Anthony Johnson are going to do the Red Man group with 3 other guys. And we're going to focus primarily on dangerous women. We're going to focus on borderline personality disorder and just women that raise red flags that guys should not be involved in. Yeah. One of the reasons for that is because of the Anthony Bourdain suicide and Asia Argento being instrumental in that. And I am on the fence as to whether she was really BPD or not, but we're going to talk about that. Why? Because I've gone through that experience. I dealt with that for 4 years. Yeah. And so I had to go through that aspect, that side of my life. And then I started, once I got past that trauma, I started dating more, and I started dating non-exclusively. Yeah. And then, so one of the girls I was dating non-exclusively was the woman who is now my wife. And I met her, like I said, in a club, and, still have my long hair. And you remember, guys say, oh, you won't find any quote unquote quality women in a club. You need to go to church, or you need to go to school, or you need to go to the bookstore or some shit like that, right? Well, I met her in a club. I flirted with her. I ran some game on her. And remember, I'm just sort of getting back into the game at this point. I think I was 26, 27 years old. And I ran game on her. And, at first she was kind of like hesitant about seeing me, but then because she was seeing other guys, and she was working as an X-ray tech at the time. She's CT tech too. So she was working at the local hospital. And so she was used to dating guys who were like radiologists and ER doctors, making like, $500,000, maybe more per year, that kind of stuff. And so she was used to dating those kind of guys. But here I came in with my long hair and a beat up pickup truck, and I had a guitar and an amp, and that was my assets that I could, my liquidated assets. And so, but
high market value right there.
But see, and I thought, and I can remember when I first started, because she was one of like probably 4 girls I was seeing at the time, and I was dating, like, so I was spinning plates, like I always say, I was spinning plates very well. And so I got wrapped up in a few of the girls there, but I didn't get too wrapped up because I was really sketchy about getting into a long-term relationship ever again. Yeah. And I was planning my life at that point. I wanted to get back to college and finish up my degree, because the 4 years that I had spent wasting my time with the BPD made me think I need to do something for my long-term benefit. At that point, I started thinking about myself more. That's when I came into the idea that I need to make myself my own mental point of origin. Because at that point I had thought, I did an assessment back then. I thought about it, and I go, how often or how many times have I done shit for women? And how long have I been living my life for women and not thinking about myself? I'm not saying that, women are evil, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying that not at all. I was making the decision to do that. I was making the decisions to, and I can talk about the pros and cons of personal responsibility, but in that instance, yes, it was good for me to own that. And I went and thought about all the way back to my mother, to my stepmother, to all the women that I'd ever known in my life. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to it's me first from here on out. And that's what I did. And that's that was one thing that made me very attractive to these women that I was with at the time, is that I If they called me, they called me. If they didn't, they didn't. I was all right with that. And so I was dating unexclusively like an adult should. It's not like a serial monogamist should. Not like I wasn't going, well, I got one girlfriend and I want to dump her, but I got to have another girlfriend to get to before I dump that girl. Wasn't like that. I was a non-exclusive. If a girl wanted to have sex with me, if she wanted to just make out, or she just wanted to have dinner or whatever, if it panned out, it did. If it didn't, I was fine with that too, because I had other girls in my Rolodex, and I was that were ready, ready to go. So I wasn't too worried about that. And then I met my wife, and my wife kind of stood out amongst the crowd. First of all, she was the hottest of all of them. And that was the first thing on my mind. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I didn't look at my wife that evening and go, she'd make a really good mother for children. I didn't think, like, she has a great ass, and I love the look, and I really want to hit that. And so I ran my game on her, whatever it was at that time. And we're talking about 1995, 96. And it worked out. And she was the first woman I've ever lived with. So my wife is still the only woman I've ever had a domestic situation with. She expected me to be the man, though. She was raised by a very alpha father. And she, and I've said this, I told Rich Cooper this on a dozen times on his shows, that she expected me to drive the car. And what I mean by driving the car is that when we were driving to a date, we were going anywhere, and we took her car, she would hand me the keys to her car to drive her to wherever we were going. To me, she was the first woman who had ever done that. Ever did. Because if I was with a girlfriend or whatever and we were going someplace, I didn't think twice about it. I would go, okay, sure, fine. I'd ride shotgun and she'd drive wherever. And then if I was going, then I would drive. It's not like I was like, oh, drive me. But she expected me to drive her. And that
she was in the car.
Said something to me. I can count on the fingers of one hand how many times I've sat in the passenger side with my mom or my wife, because that's just what she expects. She expects me to be the man. And it was weird for me because I had never met a woman who expected me to be masculine and expected me to, and she said this, to be above her, above her in the dominance, I guess, of the relationship. Because at that point I thought, well, you got to be equal. And if we ever got married, don't worry, I'll play fair with you. We'll just be this egalitarian marriage. And she didn't want that. She was like, no. And she even said, I want you to be above me. And I was like, and I thought, wow, this is kind of weird. But then I understood that that's just how she was raised. Because she was raised, she has an older sister, she had a younger brother, and she had a very masculine father, who is still a good friend of mine. I love her father to death. We go shooting and everything. We really clicked. But we wouldn't have clicked back then, because I didn't understand how to be a dominant alpha back then. I was kind of a lesser alpha, but I was an alpha in the sense that I could go out and get women. And if I found it, if I was making myself first, and I kind of had this, I don't give a fuck attitude, that women were attracted to that. That was an attraction bonus. And that my look was an attraction bonus. The fact that I was creative as an artist and a musician, everything, that was an attraction. So I started doing these assessments of like, what is it that makes me attractive? Because I think most guys who are natural alphas never do that. They never have an occasion to think of why they don't if it ain't broke, they don't fix it. Right. They don't think, oh, well, they don't look under the hood. They just go with it. And I think that a lot of natural alphas end up getting themselves into trouble because they don't understand the nature of women. They know how to get laid, but they don't understand the nature of women. And so, like, I had friends who are like natural alphas who were like nailing just hot chicks when they're 14, 15 years old. Like, and I'm not exaggerating. I know I have a good friend named Mario who was like half Italian and half Spanish. Here he's American, but that's his descent. And the guy was naturally muscular, naturally had that liquid blue eyes, just gorgeous dude. I mean, the guy was freaking could be a model, but he's caused a consequence because he didn't understand. He knew how to get laid, but as a consequence of that, he had 3 kids with 2 wives, I think. And then the last time I think I talked to him, he was going to marry another girl, And
Oh.
so I had gone through, and his life was a wreck
Uh-huh.
because he could get laid, but he didn't
Yeah.
know that he's putting himself into a risky position by getting laid. And
Mm.
so I was actually doing that work, and I was thinking, okay, what is it that's making me attractive here? And then
Uh-huh.
I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from my wife as well, because my wife expected me to be the conventionally masculine dude. And if I have a moment of kind of awakening or being red pill, it was probably right about there, where I
Mhm.
was like, people I say, when did you unplug from the matrix? If it was a gradual long-term thing, but if there was one point I would say, it was right there when I met my wife and I decided that, this could be good in the long term. And
Hmm.
I asked myself then, I said, is this a woman that I can be faithful to?
Yeah.
Because I know me, I know I've seen
Yeah.
me do it before. I've been the cheater and I've been the cheated. And I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to start a family. I don't want to get into a long-term thing. If later on down the road, I'm going to go, I want to fuck somebody else. And so I, I did some real soul searching, and I'm like, you know what?
Uh-huh.
She's gorgeous. I love having sex with her. She expects me to be the man. She was in fact really good with kids, because
Hmm.
her niece was just like her 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 niece to her niece. She might as well have been her mother, because that's how
Hmm.
close they were, and she was really good with
Uh-huh.
kids. And I'm like, yeah, I could do this. I could ask her to
Hmm.
marry, and I proposed to her and stuff. So, but that's anyway. So there, you want to humanize me? Yes, I proposed to
No.
my wife, and since then, we both clicked, kind of in a spiritual way. We both have similar religious beliefs. We I love her family. My family is kind of but I understand that, and she loves my family. She loves my mom. Let's just say she loves my mom. And so we got, it was a good blending of families.
Yeah.
And like I said, my daughter is just absolutely whip smart. She's gorgeous, a model. She's it literally is a model,
What?
and a pageant winner. And she's just
Hmm.
absolutely gorgeous, absolutely smart, smarter than me when it comes to math, because she went a lot further in mathematics than I ever did. But I'm
Uh-huh.
an art guy. She was, which blew me away. And really good, as you might guess, really good at writing. And
Yeah.
so she will probably end up being an author like her dad too. So anyways, that's my story.
No, that's great. I love it. I'm really curious too, though. Like, what are your daughter and your wife's thoughts about your writings and what you teach and propagate?
I would say that my wife and my daughter obviously know that I write. Okay, they obviously know that I have 3 books out. They're very proud of the books that I write. They both read the first one. My
Mm-hmm.
wife, I think, has read the second one. My daughter, I think she's only read the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would say that they agree. Well, my daughter agrees with pretty much everything that I write in those. I think she might disagree with me on the third iron rule, which is, if a woman makes you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait.
Hmm.
I think my wife would. I think she would agree with it now, but there was a time she would probably not have agreed with that,
Hmm.
um, and only because I think she's had some time to really kind of mull it over, I guess. And because I'll use these examples, and she'll go, "Yeah, you're right." But they've seen it. They've read my stuff. My wife actually came with me to the 21 convention.
Mm-hmm.
She just stayed up in the room and went and did her thing while I was speaking. But she was
Yeah.
there. Some of the guys there met her. We went out and had dinner on at least a couple nights there. And I mean, they'll tell you. I mean, she's still gorgeous as can be. And I mean, see, I tell you, I'm gonna sell out Christian McQueen right now. Christian McQueen I don't know if you're familiar with Christian. Christian McQueen
Uh-huh.
he's a pickup artist, and he is
Okay.
a notorious playboy guy. Okay, he's a PUA, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he's beyond PUA, to be honest with you. I think he sort of blends like entrepreneurship and pickup artistry and game, and
Mm.
basically he coaches guys. He coaches guys in the sense that he takes them out and does infields with them, and he's a private
Oh, really?
coach, very
Okay.
high demand in both in the United States and in Europe. Anyway, so he's speaking at the 21 convention,
Mm-hmm.
And my wife is there, and she went off to go do something. I can't remember what she was doing. We were coming out of the speaking hall before, like the night before, and my wife's walking by, and instantly he sees my wife, and he's like looking at her, and he's like, and everybody else is looking because they don't know what my wife looks like. And I go,
Uh-huh.
yeah. I went up to the Christian. I said, yeah, she's pretty hot. He's like, yeah. He says, I haven't seen any other women around here, because it's the 21 convention. It's really for men, right? There's not too many, it's not too many women. And I go, you should go try it. You should go run some game. She already knows who he is, but he doesn't know who he is, right? Because I've talked about, I've done Christian. Actually, the year before, I had gone and done the Man in Demand conference with Christian, so she was very familiar with Christian. I was like, oh, go on. And then he's like, she with you? And I go, no. Like, go on, go after it. And he didn't take the bait, but that was pretty funny that he saw her, and he was like, oh, and but yeah, so that was kind of fun,
That's funny.
but she knows, she takes everything kind of, she is very good humored. She understands the whole thing, but she also understands why I'm doing it too, like what we were just discussing. She understands the very serious side of it, and she's very proud. She's very proud of me, and she even told the guys at the 21 convention. I think it was Anthony or somebody else was hitting her up. I think it was Anthony. Anthony said, what do you think your husband, or how are, what is he really like, And my wife is like, well, he's Rollo Tomassi, she's like, he's great, blah, 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 and she's always looking up to me. I know for a fact that she admires me. She admires me for what I do, and what, just she admires me for what I am. Okay. I'm always of the opinion that women don't fall in love with you for who you are, but they fall in love with you for what you are. And she's very much in love with what I am. Whether she's in love with who I am, she would say so. She would say, yes, I'm very much in love with you. We can debate that, but but I have a picture of her on my wall right now. Very good looking. Like I said, she and her sister are very, very attractive. She comes from very good genes. And as far as what I do, she's always supportive of it, even when I wasn't making money at it. I remember this. At some point, I will probably go full-time as a writer. That day I'm kind of half-time right now. I'm splitting my efforts between being Rollo Tomassi and doing my old work. There's a day that it will come that I will probably transition over to just writing. I never set out to be an author. I just did it because
life happens though. Come on.
Yeah, life happens. And but I think that what she thinks of it, like I said, she's always been very supportive of me and whatever I do, because again, that goes back to her wanting me to be the man. And so that's just how it works. And as long as I can stay that guy, And people always think, well, it's not unconditional. Well, I think, what the fuck what is really unconditional? There's no such thing as unconditional. And there, if I turned into this drunk fuck, wreck of a man, in the next 6 months, I would agree with her. Yeah, leave him. I would say the same thing. It's like, if a guy drops his, I don't say his guard, but if a guy drops his burden of performance and just like gives up and says, fuck it, I'm done. I can't hack it anymore. I'm just going to go, eat ice cream and watch movies all day or whatever. What woman is going to respect that, And so I think what I do always is something that she's been able to respect. And in some cases, depending on what it is, admire. Like when I was doing really big liquor brands, then she was like, you really have a real talent. You have a real God-given gift here that you're working. And so there's parts of I'll just finish with this. The best compliment my wife ever gave to me was, I hope our daughter finds a husband as awesome as you, or as great as you.
Oh man.
And I was like,
that is the best compliment you could ever hear.
I can die now.
Yeah. That's amazing. That kind of that makes me really happy. And I hope people actually hear what you're saying too. I
hope so too.
You know what I mean? Anyway.
Well, and what gets me, and just to follow on that, is what gets me is when guys, deal with guys who are lonely. I can deal with guys that are just, I mean, like crushing loneliness, crushing solitude and isolation. I
Exactly.
talk to guys who are in marriages that they're just like, I don't know what to do. I can't, yeah, I don't want to leave her because I love her so much, but it's just, I can't take this shit anymore because we
Yeah.
don't have sex. We don't do, I lost my frame. How do I get back my frame? I deal with guys like that. I deal with guys who are dealing
Yeah.
with divorce. I deal with older guys who never really had the relationship that they thought they had.
Yeah.
So when I see that, and that's what, whenever I tell guys, I said, don't look at my life and don't look at my marriage as a
Yeah.
blueprint for yours, because I'm not you and you're not me. And the woman you end up with will not be, Mrs. Tomassi. And that's why I always say it's individual, and I don't give
Mhm.
12-step, programs to get to where I am today, because I don't, for some guys, maybe my marriage isn't even all that great because they've got, maybe they're fucking two models, they got polygamists, whatever. I don't know. They got something crazy in mind. Great. Fine. I'd love to hear from you. But I always tell guys, don't use my situation as a metric for your
No,
own success.
but I think it's good for them to know who you are, though, at the same time, and like because I mean that paints so much more of a picture and a validity, in my opinion, of what you're writing. It's
Mm.
like if you were some dude with a silicone doll in your bedroom,
Mm.
right? That would be complete.
So a silicone would probably be a downgrade for some of those guys, but yeah.
But you know what I'm saying?
There's more expensive models on the market, apparently. I've learned that days.
I don't even want to know. But I have like two more questions I want to touch base on with you, and one of them is there seems to be a maybe from what I've read on the TRP subreddit and some of your writings, I feel like some of the guys interpret what you're saying is that emotions are bad, and so I would like for you to touch base on your perspective of emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. All right. That's good. That's a good question, because recently last month, I finished up a series about what I call interpretive processes, or psychologically interpretive processes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody has ever written anything like this. Well, maybe in psychology there has. If they are, I haven't really come to that yet. But certainly nobody in the manosphere has written anything like this.
Uh-huh.
And what I did is I broke down the three interpretive processes that human beings have. And what that is the instinctual process, the emotional process, and the rational process.
Mm.
And the one we are most fixated on in this day and age is the emotional. Because we have ceded all authority to women and how women function and how women, we've given all priority to women these days.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes as a social order, we have given everything's feminine primary right now. Like I was telling you before, when I was being raised, from a kid all the way up to my teenage years, one of the biggest things that got me in trouble was trying to associate and trying to be more like a woman, at least in mentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to identify, I would say, oh, you need to identify more with women, right? Well, you never say, oh, you need to identify more as a man. No, anyone would say that, because the priority is on the woman, right?
Yeah. I want to do that now.
Yeah. The priority is on the woman. And so our teaching process is, we're fixated on teaching little boys as if they were defective girls. Well, what are we teaching them? We're teaching boys to be in touch with their emotions and to be more sensitive and to express their emotions and to, and you can tell just by the way I'm saying that I don't really think that that's the way to go. But what it is the reason I'm characterizing it like that is because it is meant to disempower men at a later date. Certainly disempower little boys, because what it's doing is it's placing women's emotive priorities as the correct priorities. They're what, if you want to be a better man, you need to be a better woman. You need to be more like a woman. You need to be more emotional. You need to be more expressive. And honestly, I think that the reason that we see these school shooters right now is because they're a direct result of this education that first of all, I come from the participation trophy generation where they've never had to compete for anything. They never have to really deal with true, real rejection until they do. And they don't know how to process that. And they don't know how to make it go away. They don't know how to do anything. But what they do know is what all their female teachers taught them, to be expressive emotionally and to get in touch with their feelings. So what are they doing? They're expressing their emotions with an assault rifle. That's how they're doing it. So I think that that's very, very dangerous. And so why do I come down hard on emotionality? Because I think, forget who it was. Oh no, it was Jack Donovan. Jack Donovan's speech, he mentioned a part, this was at the 21 convention last year, he had a part in there where he mentions this dynamic called transvaluation. What transvaluation is it's taking one value and giving it another value. But one that is more fitting to what benefits you or what aligns with you. So when guys say, when I hear guys say, "Oh, you need to be more vulnerable." Women love vulnerability, and weakness is strength, or vulnerability is really a strength. No, it is not really a strength. It is that it's you thinking it is because you've been brought up by female teachers in what I call the female village, teaching you that you need to be more expressive and more emotive because you're defective. Because unless you can be taught to emote and interpret information through the emotional interpretive process, like a woman, you are a defective human being. That's why they say that when feminists will give their kids these little placards to take to the Women's March or wherever they're going to go protest, and they say, boys will be boys, but the last boys is crossed out, and then below it is written, good humans. So boys will be good humans. Well, how do I get to be, you mean I'm born a bad human? I'm a boy, so therefore it's automatically negative. And that's the message that we're teaching these kids, right? How are we teaching them? How is that working? Well, we're teaching them through an emotive process. So in that series of posts, I go through the instinctive process, which is our instincts. Okay, so it's like, there are hindbrain reactions to danger, to self-preservation is probably the easiest one to understand. It's self-preservation instinct, fight or flight. That's an instinct. Okay. They're base root level ideas, or they're not emotions. Let's not talk about them. They're an instinct. They give you a feeling. So if you see a giant bear and it's coming at you, well, what's going to happen? You see that, you register it there's no emotion, there's no reason. It's just instinct. And your instinct is either I got to kill this thing, or I got to run the hell away from this thing. Okay?
Survival.
That's the instinctive process. Well, there's other instinctive processes too. There's an instinctive process for sex. There's an instinctive process for hunger. There's instinctive processes for other things. One of those, a more complex one, is mate guarding. Both men and women do it, but primarily men, because men tend to be in the more necessitous side of a monogamous pairing. So, because they want to know, another instinct, they want to know paternity. They want certainty of paternity. That's why some animals, like particularly higher primates, will go and kill the offspring of rival, the defeated rival alphas that they conquered or they killed or whatever, and they'll go kill their young because those aren't their young and they don't want those young to be got. So there's this sort of this instinctual knowledge that paternity is important. That's an instinct. And which I think is really being, again, taught to men that it shouldn't be important. They're trying to condition men away from the idea that knowing the paternity of your kid is not all that important, because a father's just a father and we're all happy feely in our little hug box. And well, by doing that, what it does is it cedes authority of hypergamy to women. So it doesn't matter who the father is, then a woman can go and have sex with alphas all through her party years, and she can find a baby to take care of that guy's kids. And it's normal and it's okay. And we're all fine with that because a father is just a father. And what that's doing is that they're trying to engineer into the next generation of guys that paternity isn't all that important. And they're trying to socially engineer away a primal instinct in a human being. And that's one example. There's a lot of other examples of those primary instincts that women well, to the benefit of women, but this social order is trying to condition out of men to benefit to benefit women's sexual strategies. So if a guy doesn't think that his paternity is important, then a woman can go breed with who she wants, and she can be supported and provided for by who she wants. And that's an evolutionary jackpot, because you're getting the best genetic material. You know, I'm just theoretically, you're getting the best genetic material, and you're getting the best provisioning. Why? Because you can't find that in the same guy. So that's how they solve that problem. So as an extension of that, we have to convince guys that their paternity isn't all that important. Well, that's really hard to do for a lot of guys. A lot of guys want to know that their kid is their kid. And another instinct, they've done these studies where these fathers will go to like these kind of religious schools where they all wear where all their kids wear a uniform. So all the girls wear their, you know, their little tartans and, you know, their outfits for Catholic girls' school, and then boys wear their own little tie, whatever thing they've done. So all it's showing is their faces, and they all look the same otherwise. Fathers will go into these situations to pick out their kid to take their kid home. Fathers can pick out their kids and find their kids in a crowd much faster than women can, the mothers themselves can, because there is an instinctual thing inside of men's head, our subconscious and our lizard brain, that we want to know that that kid is our fucking kid. And if it's not, kill the kid. You want to talk about infanticide? And I'm not saying go kill the kid. I'm just saying that's the subroutine in a guy's brain. So you have to condition that and learn not to kill other men's children if you're marrying a different wife. Okay. So that's something that we have to learn. Why? Because we have that instinctual process. So that's the instinctual process I was talking about. Then there's the emotive process. And the emotive one is the process that everyone is most familiar with. And that is that we see information, or stimuli. We take stimuli from our environment or another person, or whatever's coming into us. Okay. Same process with instinct. Okay. We're taking stimuli from the outside world, and our instincts that are unlearned, you know, unconditioned instincts, you know, cause us to behave in a certain way, because, you know, when you're in a dangerous situation, the ones who had that survived, and the ones who didn't died. Okay. Yeah. And then the emotional side is that you have to understand, I made this link, is that in the emotional side of things, emotionality is is also a part of our subconscious, but it's also a part of our conscious too. It kind of shares two different spaces. So if if I see a woman, this is more instinctual, but if I see a woman and she's very, very attractive, and she's in a swimsuit, or maybe she's half naked or something, that stimulates a part of my brain that is associated with tool use. So when women say, "Oh, men objectify women sexually," yes, we do, because that's part of our mental firmware, to see that as a problem to solve, because men are deductive problem solvers, and reproduction is a big problem that men need to solve. So we have it. It's so important, constant, that we have to have it as a subroutine in our heads, right? Yeah. So when I see that, what happens? Or when certain things happen environmentally, I'll get a hard on because I'm hugging a new girl, or I'm seeing this new chick, I'm seeing the Playboy centerfold. Okay. What it's doing is I'm processing this, and my body is responding to it by preparing me for sex. Same thing happens when you are very, very hungry and you've got to eat, right? That's a survival instinct. You're really hungry. And what happens when you see you're just about to sit down to a good meal? You start to salivate. Wow. Yeah. You didn't go, time for me to salivate. Let's see if I can get this to work. You don't do that. It just automatically happens. It's systemic as part of your body. Okay. Yeah. That's the instinctual side of things. But what happens is in the emotional side of things, we see certain stimuli in our environment and we react emotionally to it. So and this is more complex. In the article I wrote about the base emotions, and then from those emotions are other more complex emotions. So I'm just going to talk about the base emotions here. Okay. And what happens is that you see something and you're interpreting information or stimuli, and your body reacts to that your mind reacts to that, and it releases hormones, and it releases dopamine, and it releases oxytocin, and it's all this chemical cocktail of stuff that will influence your emotive state. So emotions are not some, they're not some woo-woo metaphysical thing. Emotions and the way you feel about stuff is a biological process. So when you experience fear, when you experience love. Love is easy. Love is easy. I mean, it's like it's a mixture of dopamine and God knows what else is, pumped in there. But you can feel love, you can feel lust, you can feel anger. When we talk about how men are more prone to anger, why? Because we have more testosterone, and gives us a predisposition to being more aggressive, to being more on edge. Builds more muscle, does lots of good things. But there's another hormone that alters your emotive state. So what I'm saying here is that there's, like, when people say, "Oh, I love my daughter," like, okay, well, guess what? You just hugged someone and oxytocin has just been flooded into your system. Or you just had sex with a very hot girl, you had a great time, and you both got off, and post-orgasm, your body pumps oxytocin into your bloodstream. Why? So you will both feel like you want to stick together, and you want to have a family together. You want to have kids together. Women more than men, because men and women are different. We respond to emotions differently. Our brains are differently wired. Our brains, our mental firmware is a whole lot different. Per sex, which I think is really amazing when you think about it in the sense that we've mapped the human genome right now, and we've mapped a lot of there's still a lot we don't know about brains, but we know enough right now to know that emotional processes can be changed. So what do we talk about? Like when a guy's on steroids, you go, "Oh, he's got roid rage," got somebody because he was juiced up. One of the first things that female bodybuilders who start juicing say is they have a much higher libido than they ever have before. Why? Because you got testosterone and it's promoting you to feel more sexual, or to be more interested in having sex. Well, you just changed. Congratulations, you just changed your emotive state. So what happens is that women tend to prioritize the importance of that. And I'm not saying emotions aren't important. They are important, but women tend to prioritize emotionality above all other interpretive processes, because they think that is the only correct way to interpret information. I've talked about this as well. So when women and men speak, we communicate differently. So
of course,
women, and I'll just because I've said this before, but women tend to communicate from a perspective of emotion, because they process things that when you have a conversation, when a man and woman have a conversation, the woman prioritizes how that conversation made her feel in the importance and the degree of that conversation. So when women get together and they talk, they do that because they just want to get together and they want to talk, right? Because there's pleasure taken in just the communication between the two of them. Why? Because they prioritize the feeling of the conversation above everything else. So women always prioritize the context of a conversation. Men, on the other hand, prioritize the content. Why? Because we're problem solvers. We had to figure out how to kill a fucking caribou and bring it back to the tribe. We had to figure out ways to build a hut. You had to figure. So how do you do that? How do we? Why? Because we're more rationally motivated. And I don't mean that we're all going to sit down and be rational. I mean that in the sense that we're rational in that we want to learn about our environment and how to make things for ourselves. Women tend to be, and you can go, anybody who wants to debate me on this, I'll be happy to. You can go and look at Steven Pinker's research on this. Women tend to be more focused and more concentrated on people. They tend to be more focused on people, including themselves. They tend to be more self-focused. They tend to be more, back and forth. They have a higher capacity for communication, self-communication, body language, all that good stuff. I'm sure you probably know that. For men, on the other hand, we tend to prioritize things. We look outwardly. We look at problems to solve, mountains to climb, things to do, and as a result, we prioritize information. And so when I'm talking to you right now, you and I are talking as men talk. Okay, I'm conveying information to you, and you're not going, "Oh man, that made me feel so shitty, man. I'm sorry." I'm not. we're transferring information because that's the priority, and you'll find that pretty much. I would challenge you or anybody watching this to go and look at a podcast between women and a podcast between men, and you will see that in every single conversation. But what happens when you get the two of them together is women tend to prioritize the emotional interpretive process, where men prioritize either the instinctual, probably not, but instinctual or the rational side of things.
Yeah.
And as a result, women teach their kids, and they teach the next generation, that to emote and to prioritize the emotive, interpretive process above everything else is the correct way to do it. And it goes back to what I was talking to you about before, about how the village teaches kids teaches boys as if they're defective girls. Yep. Why? Because men and boys are not naturally predisposed to communicate and to think and to prioritize emotion above rationality, thinking. So what do? We go and we give them Ritalin, we give them Adderall, we drug them, we keep them off we say, oh, you're being disruptive, go sit in the corner.
Yeah.
And so we prioritize the emotional process above all else. And so when guys come up to me, and I'll spare you the rational process because it doesn't really relate to the emotion question, but guys who are properly conditioned, guys who are like these blue pill, perfect blue pill conditioned guy, they believe in that same crap. They believe in all of the advertising that goes along with the emotive process, because they believe that they need to be more like women, and they need to identify more like women because they've been taught like that, just like I was taught. I mean, remember, this has been going on since the sexual revolution. This has been going on since the late 60s, because I mean, I had to deal with this. And I know kids up to 2018 are still dealing with this, that they're being taught that in the Western culture, at least, they're being taught as if they were defective girls. And unless they come from an ethnicity or a culture or subculture that teaches a form of masculinity that sublimates the emotional part, unless they are taught that's the education that they're going to get. And so when guys say, oh, you need to be more emotional, you need to be you need to be more vulnerable. Women like vulnerability. I'm vulnerable, or we're not all bad guys, right? And they're trying. It's funny because they're trying to fight this cultural zeitgeist that masculinity is evil and that masculinity is a negative. But they want to be the exception to that rule. How am I going to be the exception to that rule? Well, I'm going to identify more with the feminine. Yeah. So that people will think I am unique, and women will like me more because I am on their team. I'm on their side, right? So I'm going to, not only am I going to be more vulnerable that women don't like, but they're going to be more feminized. They're going to be more feminine identifying at that point. And so I don't want to just talk about vulnerability, but we'll talk about the emotional state, the emotive side of things. That's what they prioritize. And so that's why I criticize that. And that's why I come down hard on these guys.
Yeah. No, I like that kind of 3-pillar kind of breakdown. What I'm curious about is, so like, I'm a huge advocate for like being self-aware, essentially, like, and in my experience with emotional intelligence, just being aware of if I'm angry or if I'm sad, like if you list off those emotions, I'm not out spewing that around to women per se, being vulnerable as the context that you put it in. But I find that being aware of my emotions helps me regulate my life. Does that make sense? It's like, yes, dude, I'm fucking pissed right now.
Right. Well, and the reason for that is that you're a man and your brain is wired like a man. And therefore you are predisposed to thinking in certain ways like that. So you're like, I sublimate my emotions. There's a lot. I don't think women really understand. There are a lot of things about men that we have to exercise self-control over all the time. People all give me grief about this. They say, well, what are we all supposed to be running around with our dicks hard and like we're uncontrollable beasts or something? Like, no, of course not. I mean, you are been raised from a very young age, and you actually have as part of your mental firmware to control and to sublimate those drives, because in the past they have not. They are a benefit, but they're not a benefit in certain contexts. So there is that, but the thing is like there are, and gosh, we could go on forever on this one, but there is.
Yeah, we could.
There is
I would love to talk about this.
There's a school of thought. Okay, that I call equalism and
Okay.
equalists. It's been going on it's called blank slate equalism or blank slate egalitarian equalism. And what that is it's this idea that men and women are the same. We're functional equals of each other. There's no differences in our brains. There's no difference in our consciousness. There's no difference in us whatsoever. When one of us has a penis and the other has a vagina, that's the only difference. And that is blank slate equalism. We're born as these, completely don't know what's going on kind.
Yeah.
Now, that has been proven completely false in the last 20 or 30 years, that blank slate equalism is horseshit, particularly now that we can map the human genome, we can map fMRI scans. And like I was telling you before, like when we see a woman and she's half dressed, we go, oh, that, because it triggers are the same area of our brain to objectify them as tool use. Yeah. So those are predispositions that we have as men, and women have predispositions as well. Everybody says, well, women are more emotional than men. Yes, that's true, because they are wired to be more emotional than men, because that is just part of it. That's how you evolve. That's just how the story goes. And then you have men who are, like I said, more focused on context and information. We're deductive, natural problem solvers. We look outwardly, women look inwardly. We're interested in things. Women are interested in people and the process and themselves. And the other aspect of that is, we just talked about the communication thing, but there's some really easy ones. Like when a boy comes out of the womb, like within, I forget, as soon as he can stand or as soon as he can throw a ball, he can throw a ball more accurately than a girl can. Why? Because that's part of your mental firmware. That's why we say, don't throw like a girl, and they go, don't be sexist. Girls can do anything boys can do. That is blank slate equalism. No, you cannot do everything as well as a boy, because men's mental firmware, what they're born knowing already, is what they're predisposed to be. The other thing is they are predisposed to be less emotional than women are. And that's why women think, they want to, he's emotionally unavailable. We need to teach men to be more emotional. No, you don't, because men are not that way to begin with. They're not emotional. I'm not saying every dude's like that, but I say the vast majority of guys are less emotional. Things don't get to us. Why? Because we had to learn. It was a survival skill. We had to learn and adapt to really fucked up situations, and we couldn't let our emotions get the best of us, right? So while we're doing that, women are, we come from hunter-gatherer tribes. Women are at the tribe, back at the tribe, raising children, nurturing kids, speaking, dealing with each other collectively amongst themselves. You look at just the evolutionary side of things, you can see how women's brains would be more attuned to emotionality, because they have to live collectively, they have to live together, they have to nurture children, they have to they work amongst themselves as a collective, where men do have to do that as well, but we have a different role, we have a different gender role from a hunter-gatherer society thing, because we're at this stage, we are very intelligent hunter-gatherers who were still, I forget what there's an actual name for this dynamic, but like in the last, like from 1900 to year 2000, we have made technological advances that happen so rapidly that we can't mentally keep up with those technologies. Well, the other part of that is that because of those technologies, we now have to interact and socialize with each other so rapidly that we don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so
it totally fucks with you.
Yeah, and it messes. But so you got a kid who is, we got a boy who can throw like a boy, as soon as he's able to run and walk. You got a girl who can't throw as accurately. Okay, that's because it's part of his mental firmware. Can you teach a girl to throw as accurately as a boy? Yes, you can. But you cannot change her neural wiring to come out of the womb and throw as accurately as that kid. You have to teach that girl how to do something as good as a guy, maybe even better than that guy. The fact of the matter is, you still had to teach that girl to do something that the boy was already predisposed to. The same thing works the other way. You're trying to teach boys, as if they're defective girls, to
lower the standard,
to be more emotive, to be little girls, to learn to be more emotional. So yes, can you learn to do that? Yeah, of course you can. What's really, you learn martial arts training. That is a real good example, because it trains you.
I love that shit.
It trains you to put yourself into a dangerous situation that all of your nerves and all of your instincts says, run the fuck out of here. Let's get out of here. You know, you're with self-preservation, right? But you don't. You condition yourself to stand your ground and to fight and to rely on what you've learned through the rational process, which we didn't talk about. But you have all that, so you can be taught to go against your natural instincts and your mental framework. Easy, yeah, of course, we do it all the time. We teach it all the time. So I'm not saying it's set in stone. What I'm saying is that blank slate is bullshit. And we're still living in a society right now that presumes that men and women are just blank slate equals. We're just living in different bodies. And that is big. And I think right now, a lot of the social unrest and the conflict and the polarization between the genders right now is a direct result of understanding that we are different. We are way more different than we are alike. And that's okay. And there's nothing fucking wrong with that. There are things that men do that they will always do better than women. Always. Why? Because they were wired to do that. Can women learn to be good as those guys? Sure they can, but they're not. The fact is they need to learn to be as good. Same thing with guys. Women communicate great. Well, if the challenge is communicating better, then women are going to be better at that. And they're going to go, oh yeah, we're great. You know, then of course they're going to wave the flag. Yay, we're better at communication. Then you say, well, you know, we're better at math. We're better at spatial recognition. We're better at, you know, throwing a ball or whatever, you know, throwing a weapon, or we're more aggressive. We have bigger upper
more
strength,
muscles,
body strength, more muscles, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. We can solve these problems over here. And they go, you sexist. I can't believe you would say something like that, you know, because we're supposed to be equal unless it's something that benefits women. And that is what goes back to the feminine primary social order, because we value anything that a man does that is unique to him, because we say women can always do that, but women can only do certain things. So we are uniquely better suited to life in general and everything else than men are. Well, that's bullshit. Like, people say, you don't believe in equality between the sexes? No, I don't. Because you're generally, when people ask me that question, they just throw out there, he said, we live in a vacuum and we're all just equal with whatever. No, we're not. We are better suited to certain tasks than they are suited to other tasks. Does that make us superior? No. It makes us superior at that particular task. But it doesn't mean that we're the best.
It doesn't make you a better fucking human being.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to, it doesn't mean that I'm going to say, I'm a male supremacist, yay me, right? But women are doing exactly that today. They're saying women are, in fact, that's all feminism really is female supremacism. It is presuming, it's funny, it's presuming a blank slate, unless it's women, and then women are way better than guys, right? but if men have something better going on for them, then no, it's like it goes against a blank slate, and it can't be true, right?
The blank slate. I'm curious though, like, I think men do have emotions. I don't think they need more emotions. I think they just like, I've seen men who aren't aware of how they're feeling and what they're feeling, and they kind of self-combust, or they come out sideways.
They'll drop. Yeah, they will tend to, because they don't know how to manifest the emotions that's in that.
Or navigate it even.
Sigmund Freud said all energy is sexual. So when a guy cannot express himself sexually, and for the very long time, right up until the advent of the internet, men have had to find other ways to create a sexual release for themselves. So if you look at technologies like, even just like Renaissance painting, it was really just pornography at the time for rich guys who could afford to have an artist come in and paint them titties. So, you know, hey, that's nice, great. Because why would you have, you know, a gallery full of, naked, you know, oh no, it's the Virgin Mary suckling baby Jesus. No, that's a titty, you know. And what did we do when we invented photography? We started shooting porn. Film, I mean, because you can look at some of the earliest photographs that were ever photographed, and you will find this whole niche of early, you know, Victorian era pornography. Same thing with movies. What do? We started making fucking skin flicks, you know. And
that's how DVDs were established. Photography industry.
Well, when we got up to the point where we could print magazines pretty well, we started making Playboy. What happened when we got VCRs? We started making videotapes for that. Every invention, every new, especially when it comes to communication and media, every invention will be appropriated and used for photography.
Yeah.
because that is what is driving and what is motivating men to do greater things. You know, you're not, I think that's one of the reasons we get like incels and MGTOW and stuff like that right now, is because they have instant, ubiquitous, access to pornography. We can jerk off anytime we want. I mean, this is a fucking miracle for guys who want to get, I have access to porn right now that I used to have to go and steal my uncle's Hustler, when I was 10 fucking years old, so I could see what a naked chick looked like, right? 10-year-old kids today have seen hardcore pornography and have been exposed to sexuality that only emperors and sultans had access to, maybe Caligula back in the Greek days had access to, but we have it right in the palm of our hand now. And so really, I'm not coming out and being crazy about porn. I just think it's beginning to understand that. But we had to control that. We had to have some sort of self-control over that. And the same thing goes for your emotions there. I'm emotional too, man. I'm an artist. I like to express myself. I like to do what I do. I've written songs. I've written music. I've done, I've sculpted. I've painted. I draw. I made, vodka bottles. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and so there's nothing wrong with being emotional. You're not going to stop your emotions. I think that's one of the biggest misnomers that feminine, like the village, likes to think. Well, men need to get in touch with their emotions because they're just stunted, or they're not emotionally available. And then what happens is when they do, and they become real emotional, they go, get out of here, you fucking this. That's and so they want that. So they say they want that, but the only reason they want that is because they want to be. I think that there is a root level want on the part of women to be able to communicate with men as if they were women. Like they want to have that same communication style that they have with their girlfriends with that guy. But the problem is once they get that, they don't have anything to do with that guy. Yeah. Because what happens is you get these guys, these beta dudes who feminize themselves and they identify with it, and they're white knights and whatever, and they understand, like, I'm a good listener, I'm going to listen to your problems, and they're the telephone friend, the emotional tampon that we call. They get like that, and they communicate in a way, because they've been taught this. They communicate in such a way that they are mimicking the communication style of a woman. And so what I think women's hindbrains recognizes is that he is a woman, that he is communicating to me as if he were a woman.
Not attractive.
Yeah. And therefore not attracted to him because he's not a suitable mate. Boom. And again, that goes back to root level hypergamy, but I think that probably, I would say that's probably a subroutine, or that's some kind of instinctual understanding. So like when guys are relating as if they are women, if they're prioritizing context and feelings above information, then their hindbrain says, I'm talking to a woman. Yeah. I'm not talking to a man. And so I'm not saying kill your emotional self. I'm just saying.
I didn't say you were.
Well, no, I've had guys tell me that. They think, well, what should I do? Should I just be this social stoic robot and not? Not at all. I think you should. I think guys definitely need to be emotional. Do they need to get emotional as in the same? I think men need to be as emotional as their natural wiring makes them emotional. Okay, and they should be in control of those emotions and in control of their behaviors, of course. Yeah. But they need to. I don't think that they need to learn to be more emotional or more emotionally expressive. Like when I was talking about the vulnerability aspect, vulnerability is only appreciated in men by women when it's out of his character. So when a guy is very stoic and he's like, he's concerned, or maybe it goes through, maybe his mom died, or maybe something, and then he goes from being this very emotionally inaccessible guy to suddenly breaking down and crying because his mom died, or his dad died, or his dog died, or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. There's that display of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I think guys blow it when they say, I'm going to go and be emotional, or I'm going to go and be vulnerable with my wife just so that we'll pair bond more. She doesn't want it. Women want a guy who is domineering or dominant, not dominant, dominating masculine, and that, so that when that vulnerability comes out and that emotion comes out, it's a treat. It is out of his character, and it makes her love him that much more because she's the only person that he can be that way with, because normally he's very reserved and very in control and has got his shit together, right? So when he doesn't have his shit together, she goes, oh, he loves me, oh, that's so, you know. And that's why
like a crack in the book, you know, they're like, oh shit, I can see a piece.
Right. And so you give them that little time, because that's a reward for them, because that emotionality for the guy that they care about and they're in love with, and to draw that out of a guy, or to be there when that guy is breaking down, or, you know, and I'm just saying that. And what's funny is we almost always associate vulnerability with a negative emotion, with like crying. I need to cry more for her, and she'll love you for crying because you feel open enough to cry. Well, she would. She probably would, if you weren't blubbering like a fucking pussy all the time, because that's what you were taught from the time you were 5 years old. If you were reserved with your emotions, you held it in, and you were, I mean, you're not saying always hold it in, but I'm just saying you're measured with it and you're in control of it. So that the times that you are out of control of it, or it just overcomes you with emotion, that is like a special occasion for her. And then, yes, then you're right. Sure, she would probably love to see that come out of you because you're being emotionally available. But we always associate that with the negative. So you've got to be crying. What about if I'm going to be emotional? I'm going to be laughing. Oh, this is great. Huh? I mean, that's being vulnerable by saying, you know, by being overly joyous over some stupid thing, or maybe you find pleasure or joy in some emotion that isn't crying. That isn't. I mean, there's a lot of emotions. That's one emotion.
Which everyone.
We always. Or hey, why can't? Yeah, I am fucking pissed off at you. Yes, I'm emotionally accessible right now. Anger is an emotion. We don't talk about that. We only want the emotions, and we only want the vulnerability that makes women feel good, because those emotions are run the gamut. Okay, I mean, there's so many different emotions, but they only want the ones from guys that make them feel good about being women, and they don't want anything else. So I can be very emotional, especially if I'm playing death metal guitar, right? I love this shit, you know. I'm expressing myself emotionally. You don't like it. Why? Because that's an emotion that doesn't flatter your feminine nature.
It's not in the paradigm that you want us to fit into. Yeah.
Right. And again, why? Because they want female supremacism. They want, and they've already got it really, they want the narrative and the social understanding to be female focused and female correct. So whatever works for women is the correct way to express your emotions. To them. I don't believe that. And again, why do I come down on guys for that? Exactly why. Because first of all, you're going against your male nature, the way you're wired. And you've been taught that the only correct way of emoting is to emote like a girl. And you know what happens then is, then you got all these blue pill beta guys who are in a competition now, because we have to have a dominance hierarchy even among beta males. They're in a competition to out emote the other guy. Who can be the most expressive? Who can be the most emotional? Oh yeah, I'm so emo, I'm going to turn gay. I don't want women anymore. I'm just going to, abdicate to them. I'm just going to totally be effeminate. I'm going to. Why do we? Here's the other thing. Why do we normalize transsexuals or transgender right now? Because we want, and 90% plus is boys to girls right now, to the point where we will introduce hormone blocking inhibitors into that kid's bloodstream to prevent them from anything masculine. And I really think that fucks up kids, particularly boys, because their wiring.
I was just reading about that.
It's still the same. Their wiring's still the same. Their hormones are different, and they're deliberately fucking that kid up. And I think it's child abuse. But why are we doing that? Because they believe in that bullshit. They believe in egalitarian, equalist bullshit, and it's just like, we're born blank slates. Oh great, okay, but I was born the wrong sex. I was born the wrong gender. Oh well, how old are you? 4 years old. Yeah, you're old enough. Go ahead. We'll let you be a girl.
they don't even know the long-term
No.
effects of those puberty blockers.
No,
I'm
we
like,
don't.
it's insane. But anyway, I could talk to you probably for forever, and
I don't know how long have we been going? I don't even.
this is like almost 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
So I need to go, but
Mhm.
thank you so much for being on. Hopefully I can
Sure.
convince you to come on again in the near
Always.
future.
Mhm.
And I'll put links to everything that we kind of referred to books wise, some articles you touched on. And yeah, is there any closing thoughts just real quick that you would like to say to anyone who's watching?
No, just if you want to learn anything more about what I've talked about, or even if you disagree with anything that I've said, I'm always open for that. I have an unmoderated comment section on my blog, so if you think I'm full of shit, please come tell me I'm full of shit. I want to know. I'm about the process, really. I'm not about like some ideology or anything like that. I'm just exposing a process right here. And if you think that you have some other information that it either reinforces or refutes anything I've said, I'm always open to that. So we get a really good conversation. I don't think I say this enough on the podcasts like at this time, but I have some really good commenters on my blog.
Yeah.
I have a group of regulars. Whenever I put out a new post, I get a bunch of newbies and they come in and they post for like the first couple of pages, but then I have the other guys who really come in and they dig in deep. And I think I feel confident saying I probably got the best commenters of anyone. So come in and join that conversation is what I'm asking.
I'm amazed by the amount of time people invest into writing and commenting and making their own posts. It's so impressive to me, and it's all
of my posts are. I don't just throw out posts to throw out a post. I try to do it once a week, but if I don't have anything or if I'm working on something, I think it needs a little. I craft my posts. Like that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
I craft them, and so I've got a draft folder full of probably 24, maybe 30 posts. I don't even have any. I may never put them out, but I don't release a post until I think that it needs to, or there'll be something going on socially, and I have to feel like I have to address it right then. Then I'll do that. But I don't just post just to post.
Yeah,
I want conversation, and I want some good thoughts. That's why I call it the rational male, right?
Very cool.
But and then you can always you'll probably put the links.
You're on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter, Rollo Tomassi at Rational Male. I'm on Twitter for as long as they don't ban me, because a lot of guys in the sphere are getting banned. And you can find my books on Amazon. Just search for The Rational Male, and then and then my blog, of course, is therationalmale.com.
Yep, and there'll be links for all of this. It'll be easy to find. Once again, I'm Tim from The Man Effect. Rollo, I really appreciate your time, and we'll have to dive in some more to emotional intelligence and a couple other things in the future here.
Sure.
I'd really love to.
Anytime.
So.
Okay.
Woo!